The sun burned the desert like fire. A vulture circled low above a broken wagon that leaned half-sunk in the dust. Inside the wagon, a young woman lay twisted in ropes, her lips split, her skin the color of paper. Flies crawled along her wrists where the rope had rubbed them raw. Her breath was thin, dry, almost gone. A half-empty water skin lay near her feet, dropped maybe by the ones who tied her there. That small mercy was the only thing that kept her alive this long. A horse's hooves echoed from the ridge. Elias was riding back from town, following the old trail where wagons sometimes passed. The wagon looked abandoned, one wheel cracked, the paint scorched by the sun. He was about to ride on when he heard it. A sound so faint it barely rose above the wind, a moan. He swung down and walked closer, hand on the butt of his Colt. The smell hit him first, sweat, blood, rope. Then he saw her. A girl maybe 25, tied at the wrists and ankles, dress torn and stiff with dirt. For a second he thought she was dead. Then her eyes opened, clouded and scared, and her voice came out like a broken whisper. "I beg you, it hurts so bad." Elias froze. The words were weak, but they hit him like a bullet. He cut the rope with his knife and caught her before she fell. Her body was burning with fever. She tried to speak again, but only air came out. He lifted her into his arms, feeling how light she was. How wrong it was for anyone to weigh that little. At his saddlebag, he found a canteen. He touched the water to her lips, slow, careful. She coughed, then swallowed. A tremor ran through her hands, half pain, half hunger. "How long have you been here?" he asked quietly. Her mouth moved, but no words came. He laid her in the shade beside the wagon. Her wrists were blistered, the rope cuts deep, some bleeding again as the pressure eased. He cleaned them with water, tore his own sleeve to wrap them tight. A small silver cross hung around her neck, glinting in the sun, sticky with dried blood. She held on to it like it was the last thing keeping her alive. The wind picked up, pushing sand across the open plain. Elias glanced around. No trail, no tracks, no wagon team. Who would leave her out here to die? And why? He looked back at her face. Her eyes had closed again, but tears slid down through the dust on her cheeks. He knew he could not leave her. He lifted her once more and set her across his saddle, the horse snorting as if it too could smell what had been done. As he turned toward the long road west, the sun dipped behind the ridge, bleeding gold over the land. He looked down at her face and whispered, "You're safe now, girl. Just hold on." But in that silence, even he could feel it. Something about this wasn't just cruelty. It was a warning. And as the horse carried them toward Sagebrush Bend, one question burned in his mind. Who would hate a woman enough to leave her for the buzzards? May woke up to the smell of coffee and smoke. For a second, she thought she was in heaven. Then her body reminded her she wasn't. Pain rushed back like fire under her skin. She tried to sit up. Her arms ached. The bandages were clean, tight. Not her own doing. A low voice spoke from across the small room. "Easy now. You've been out a full day." Elias sat near the stove, turning beans in a tin pot. His shirt was off one shoulder, a fresh bandage on his forearm from where the rope had burned him too. May blinked, unsure if he was real. "Where am I?" she whispered. "Sagebrush Bend. My place." He handed her a cup of water. "Drink slow." "You were near gone when I found you." For the next 2 days, May drifted in and out of sleep. Sometimes she woke just long enough to take a sip of broth Elias made from beans and herbs. He changed her bandages twice a day, spoke little, but never left her alone too long. The fever broke on the third morning. When she finally opened her eyes for real, the world had color again. She did, and the first swallow hit her stomach like a spark of life. Tears welled before she could stop them. "Thank you," she said, her voice trembling. He nodded. Quiet. "You want to tell me who did this to you?" She stared into the cup, her fingers shaking. "It was my boss," she said softly. "I worked for the Hales over by the river." Her eyes went distant, her voice smaller. "He came to the barn last night, tried to put his hands on me. I hit him with a bucket. His wife saw us, thought I was trying to take him. Lorna always hated me, and she thought I was after her husband long before that night. I guess when she saw us, It just gave her the reason she wanted. They tied me up, said I'd learn what shame feels like. Elias didn't speak. The only sound was the beans bubbling slow. He kept his gaze on the stove, jaw tight. Then he said, "And they left you there, just like that." She nodded. Her lip quivered, but she pressed it flat, proud even in her pain. "I didn't cry until I saw you. Guess that's when it felt safe enough to hurt." He looked at her then, really looked. She was young, too young to have eyes that tired. He poured a bowl of beans and set it on her lap. "Eat," he said. She hesitated, then smiled weakly. "You always feed strangers like this?" "Only the half-dead ones." That made her laugh, just a little. It was the first good sound in that house in a long time. Outside, cicadas screamed in the heat. Inside, for a moment, it was almost peaceful, but peace never lasted long out here. While May ate, Elias went to fetch water from the trough. He saw tracks in the dust, fresh hoof prints heading west, too heavy to be drifters, too neat to be lost. He felt it in his gut before his mind caught up. Somebody knew she was still alive, and they were coming back for her. That night the wind came up hard across the plain. The lantern on the porch flickered like it was scared too. Elias checked the horses, checked his rifle, then stepped inside. May sat by the stove, hair brushed back, a blanket around her shoulders. She looked better, but there was still that look in her eyes, like she was waiting for something bad to find her again. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. She shook her head. "Every time I close my eyes, I hear him." That man, his boots on the wood floor, his voice. Elias poured coffee into 2 tin cups. "Then don't close your eyes yet," he said. "Sit and drink." They sat in silence for a long while. The only sound was the whistle of wind through the boards. Just before dawn, the dogs started barking. Elias stood, slow but ready. May's hands went wide around her cup. He went to the window and saw dust rising down the trail. A single rider first, then 2 more. He knew that shape on the front horse. Victor Hale. Elias stepped onto the porch, rifle low but ready. Victor pulled up short, his grin sharp as a knife. He had sent his ranch hands away first. A man like Victor liked to do his own threatening, thought it made him look brave. "You got something of mine." "McCrae," he called out. Elias didn't move. "Don't see your name on her." Victor spat in the dirt. "She's a liar and a thief. She belongs to the law." May came to the doorway behind him, voice trembling. "You left me to die." That did it. Victor's face twisted. He swung down from his horse and started for her, yelling words no decent man should ever say. Elias stepped in his path, and the next second Victor hit the ground hard. The 2 men rolled in the dust, fists flying, boots scraping gravel. Elias fought like someone who'd buried too many good things already. When he finally pinned Victor, blood streaked across both their faces. "Go home," Elias said, breathing heavy. "Next time you come here, bring the truth." Victor staggered to his feet, spitting red. "This ain't over," he hissed. Then he swung up on his horse and rode off, dust swallowing him whole. May stood frozen by the door. Elias turned, his chest rising and falling. "You all right?" he asked. She nodded, eyes glassy. "I thought he'd kill me again. I guess I was wrong." He gave a small smile. "Guess you were." The sun broke over the ridge, light pouring across the valley, but even in that light, Elias felt something darker coming. A man like Victor never quit while his pride still breathed. He poured May another cup of coffee, hands still shaking. "Eat something," he said. "You'll need your strength. Next time, he won't come alone." And he was right. By the time the next sunset fell over Sagebrush Bend, the law was riding in with him. So before we face that storm together, go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you want to see what happens when justice meets the Wild West. Now, pour yourself a cup of tea, lean back, and tell me this. What time is it where you are? And where in the world are you listening from? By the next evening, the sky over Sagebrush Bend looked bruised. Dark clouds pressed low. The kind that make a man feel something bad is on its way. Elias sat on the porch, sharpening his knife, while May fed the chickens by the pen. Both of them were quiet. They didn't need words to feel what was coming. For 2 days after the fight, the ranch stayed quiet. but Elias noticed riders on the far ridge more than once. Victor was spinning his tail in town, saying May had stolen from him and tried to run. By the time word reached the sheriff, the story had already grown teeth. Then they heard the sound, hooves. Not one horse this time. Several. Elias stood, wiping his hands on his jeans. A dust trail wound down the ridge like a snake. At the front rode Victor Hale, and beside him, wearing the star of Rio Arriba County, was Sheriff Alonzo Ortega. May froze where she stood. Elias told her to stay inside. He stepped down off the porch as the riders pulled up. The sheriff was a broad man, gray hair tied back, eyes that looked like they'd seen too much and still didn't care to see more. "Elias McCrae," he said, "I hear you're keeping a woman that don't belong to you." Elias kept his voice calm. "She belongs to herself. Sheriff, you want to ask her?" "She's right inside." Victor snorted. "She's a liar. She stole from my wife, ran off with cash from the ranch, and this man helped her hide." Sheriff Ortega turned his gaze to May, who had stepped into the doorway. She looked small but steady, her hands still bruised but no longer shaking. "I stole nothing," she said. "I was tied up and left to die." "Ask him where the rope burns came from." Victor laughed, ugly and forced. "She's crazy. You can see that." The sheriff studied them both, silent a long time. Then he motioned for his deputy to check the wagon parked behind the barn. Inside, they found a torn cloth with the Hale brand stitched in gold thread. The old wagon still sat half buried near the dry creek. No one had touched it since the storm rolled through. Dust had covered most of it, but some things never wash away easy. And beside it, a small square of fabric with blood and rope fibers still caught in the weave. May's eyes filled when she saw it. "That's mine," she whispered. "He used it to gag me." Elias didn't say a word. He didn't have to. The sheriff's eyes softened just a bit, and he turned to Victor. "You got a strange way of taking care of your help." "Hale." Victor's face went red. "She's lying. You can't prove nothing." The sheriff's hand rested on his pistol, not to draw it, just to remind everyone he could. "Maybe not today, but I'll be watching you, Hale, every step." Victor spat, mounted his horse, and yanked the reins hard. He didn't look back, but the look in his eyes promised trouble wasn't done yet. The sheriff tipped his hat to May. "You stay put for now. We'll let the papers decide the rest." Then he turned to Elias. "Keep her safe. McCrae, some men don't learn unless the Lord teaches them himself." When they rode off, the valley went quiet again. May leaned against the door frame, weak with relief. Elias watched the riders fade into the dust. He could still feel the storm sitting out there, waiting, because men like Victor never come back just to talk. For a long time after the sheriff left, the ranch stayed quiet. The kind of quiet that feels alive, like the land itself was holding its breath. May stood on the porch watching the horizon. The last of the riders disappeared in the orange dust of sunset. Elias leaned against the rail beside her, arms crossed, his eyes softer than she had ever seen. "You think he'll come back?" she asked. Elias took a slow breath. "Men like him always do, but not today. Today we rest." That night the air was warm and still. May couldn't sleep. She sat by the window, looking out at the silver line of the river. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel small. She didn't feel broken. The hurt was still there, but it didn't own her anymore. Over the weeks that followed, the wounds on her wrists faded. So did the fear in her eyes. She learned to mend fences, feed the cattle, even ride alone down to the creek. Elias watched from a distance, never saying much, but always near enough if she needed him. He had known loss, too. Maybe that was why their silences fit together so easily. One evening, months later, May brought him a bowl of stew. He smiled. Tired but content. "You cook better than any trail hand I ever met," he said. She laughed. "I guess hunger makes everything taste good." He looked at her then, a look that said more than words could manage. "You gave this place life again," he said quietly. "Guess we both needed saving." The wind outside carried the sound of night birds and slow water. May reached across the table, her hand resting on his. There was no speech, no promise, just a calm knowing that two souls had found their way back from the edge. The next spring, The valley bloomed brighter than anyone remembered. Wildflowers spread across the fields where blood had once dried. A cradle sat by the window now, soft blankets folded inside. May hummed as she worked, her voice steady and full. Elias stepped in from the yard, dirt on his boots, sunlight on his shoulders. He stopped to watch her for a moment, then said, "You know, this place finally feels like home." She smiled. It was always home. We just had to earn it. And maybe that is the lesson hidden in the dust of the Old West. That pain can build you if you let it. That kindness can grow even in hard soil. And that sometimes the people who save us are the ones who are just as lost. Now tell me, if you had ridden past that broken wagon on that summer day, would you have stopped? If this story touched your heart, go ahead and give it a like. And subscribe so you don't miss the next journey through the wild heart of the West. Now take a sip of your tea, breathe slow, and tell me this in the comments. What time is it where you are, and where in this wide world are you listening from?